Hey, Larken Rose here. Just got back from Porcfest yesterday. That's why I'm burned to a crisp. Do not adjust the color of your screen. I'm just a lobster from being sunburned, from hanging out at my rock for a week. And I gave 3 different talks and then a short rant and had a showing of the Jones Plantation and was on a panel discussion. So kind of a busy week. One of the main talks I gave there wasn't at the pavilion and it wasn't recorded. And somebody said, oh, I wish there was recording so I could see that. So I'm doing this video that's actually a piece of it. It's not the whole thing because the whole thing was almost an hour long. But I'm taking a piece of it. It sort of covers 2 different things, but they're interrelated, as you will see. As I've talked about a million times, having been into political philosophy for like 27 years now, over and over again I've received an accidental education in human psychology and the concepts of persuasion and how people think and how people question their paradigms. And so I have to start with a few words of that. We, as mere mortal human beings, we like to think that whatever we believe is the truth and that our current conclusions are the correct ones. That's natural, it's understandable, but it can often be an obstacle to people actually learning anything new. Because if the average person believes a certain thing and then somebody else comes along and says, well, actually, with all due respect, I have something which demonstrates that you're totally wrong about that. How does the average person usually react? What do they do with that? Do they respond by saying, well, for now I will set aside my biases and preconceived ideas and I'll be objective and open and carefully consider your evidence and arguments? That's almost never the response. Instead, the automatic thing that people do, unless they train themselves not to, the automatic thing that human beings do is when we're faced with ideas and claims that go contrary to whatever we already believe, we go into defensive mode. We view any different outside opinion as a sort of philosophical threat, which must be warded off or defeated to preserve whatever we already believed. This isn't rational, but it's just kind of human. And there's a huge difference between trying to find the truth and wanting to think we already have the truth. And I know very good people who are actually continually good at doing the former. My brother Sean is actually really dang good at that. He often says that his favorite thing is to be wrong. That doesn't mean he's trying to be wrong. It means that he acknowledges that if you can't learn something new, your understanding can't progress unless you're willing to consider the possibility that what you believe right now is wrong or at least incomplete. So that's another way to say he likes learning new things and getting new understanding, is he likes to be wrong. But that's something that not many people do, and you sort of have to train yourself to do that. And I have to give another shout out, I hate that saying, but I'm going to use it, to a talk that a friend of mine, Patrick Smith, gave down at Anarchapulco, describing the things of biases and what we want to believe and wishful thinking and how much self-awareness and effort it takes to be anything close to objective. And almost nobody's actually all the way objective, but to even try to get closer to being objective and rational, it takes a lot. And there are a lot of, this is true of pro-freedom people too, because they're still just people. Like whatever people believe, they hear something, it sounds cool, they want to believe it, they cling on to it, and then they're not very good at objectively examining whether they're wrong or their belief is incomplete or part of it's right and part of it's wrong, things like that. And the more someone is attached to a belief and the longer they've held that belief, the less willing they usually are to question it or to test whether it's true. And then if they're surrounded by a bunch of people who believe the same thing, it makes it even harder for them to reconsider anything. Because then not only are they risking the existential discomfort of thinking, wow, I was wrong about something important all that time, but now, wow, I'm going to change my mind and then I'm going to be at odds with everybody around me because I'm on the same page right now. And I point out the example that makes some people uncomfortable. If you look at a map of the world and you color code it by religions, now this is less true because of our ability to move and communicate. It's less true today. It's still pretty dang true, but it's less true. But if you color code by religions, it's like, all these people believe this, all these people believe that, all these people believe, like millions of people. Do you think that's a coincidence? It just happens that everybody over here objectively thought about it and came to the same religious, spiritual conclusion. And everybody over here objectively thought about it and all came to a different conclusion. Like, it's peer pressure. Most beliefs that most people have are peer pressure. And it's important to point out that if what you believe is the truth, you don't have to be scared of testing it. You don't have to be scared of doubting it. You don't have to be scared of listening to evidence which someone is saying goes against it. And I use the example of, like, if you think that 2 + 2 = 4, which I hope you do, and I say, I dare you to take 2 apples and 2 apples and add them up, you're not going to be hesitant to do that. You're not going to be scared because you're all the way sure that 2 + 2 = 4, and you know how to count, so you can do that. I mean, you might think it's a waste of time. It's silly, but you're not going to be scared to do it. But imagine a claim that's not so simple, but still seems sort of silly. I tell you, by the way, I have reason to believe that you have Martians living in the trunk of your car. How do you respond? Are you going to believe me? Probably not. You don't really have a reason to, and that would sound really weird. And, you'd have plenty of reason to be skeptical of such a claim. But if I then said, well, then open the trunk and let's see if there are Martians in there, would you be defensive and resistant? Probably not. You might think it's silly and stupid and say, I'm not going to bother to do that. Your claim is idiotic. But would you actually be scared to check? Or would you just open the trunk and go, look, no Martians, duh. Because you don't need to be hesitant to check, and you won't be hesitant to check unless part of you thinks that maybe there are Martians in your trunk. So you're like, no, I'm a little bit nervous. The truth seeker in you would be eager to find out, even if you were pretty sure there weren't Martians in your trunk. But part of you, if you actually thought there might be, might not want to see the truth, might hesitate. And that's true of anything, not just Martians in the trunk. So I'm going to give an example of how I like to ask people to open their proverbial trunk when it comes to their political beliefs. Things that are fundamental to how they see reality and society and morality and humanity and all that. And again, if what you believe is already true, this shouldn't be difficult and it shouldn't be scary. Like, you can test, like if you believe 2 + 2 = 4, you can test that all day long, still going to work. Now, I'm going to use one example here, and it's mostly going to deal with pretty basic, simple questions and ideas. I mean, they're really simple and basic. They're not quite 2 + 2, but it's pretty dang close. And if somebody, while hearing questions that are almost that simple, starts to get uncomfortable, it's usually because they see that the logic is heading somewhere. It's heading to a conclusion that they know doesn't match what they already believe. So even when the logic is obvious and the question is obvious and the answers are obvious, they'll start to hesitate and get scared because they see where it's leading. And so they already get scared and defensive because they're scared of having to see something which may mess up whatever they already believe and whatever they're emotionally attached to. So the second part is, like, if it turns out you're wrong about something fundamental, do you want to know? Or do you want to cling to the wrongness and, like, heck with the truth? just whatever's comfortable and familiar, whether it's right or not. So sometimes I'll literally dare people to put their assumptions and beliefs to the test by answering a few questions about what they believe. And it's worth pointing out, they don't have to convince me. They don't have to talk me into anything. They get to choose their answers, and they even get to be the judge and jury to decide whether their own answers make sense. So it's not like, I'm going to argue against you and you have to out-debate me. It's just, I'm going to ask you what you think, and you get to decide whether what you think of your own answers. Because at the end of the day, who cares if you agree with me? But you might kind of care whether you agree with yourself and whether you're at peace with some basic concepts relating to what you actually believe. So here we go. I'm going to use one example that I used at my talk. And again, this is basic to the point of kind of sounding silly, but even without ever getting more complicated than so simple it sounds ridiculous, you can get to a point that it makes most people uncomfortable because they don't know how to answer eventually without it even getting complicated at all. So, I start with, for example, do you think it's bad, immoral, to murder somebody for wearing an ugly sweater? Like, the only thing you have against them is you think their sweater is ugly. Is it okay to murder somebody? Now, almost everybody agrees that's not okay. That's immoral. Now, I don't care where your assessment of right and wrong comes from, whether it's from religion or from universally preferential behavior or from just your gut instincts, anything else, I don't care. From a book, a teacher, whatever. If you believe in right and wrong, I don't care where you get your right and wrong. It's just questions about what you believe. So, atheists and religious people and spiritual, but not really, the vast majority of people agree that it's not okay to murder someone for wearing an ugly sweater. Now, if I say, well, what if you and a few other people all get together and say, our neighbor that wears ugly sweaters, like, we're tired of seeing that. If we get together, do we then have the right to murder the guy for wearing an ugly sweater? And again, most people go, no, it doesn't matter how many there are. Like, having more people doing something evil doesn't make it good. Okay? Good to know. Now, what if you and your neighbors who really hate that guy's sweater ask somebody else to kill him for you? So you're not going to do it yourself. You're basically going to be cowardly and ask somebody else to go kill him. Is that okay? And everybody, of course, obviously says, no, it's not. It's not okay. What if you pay somebody else? So he's just doing his job and you just hired someone to do a job. The job happened to be murdering someone for wearing an ugly sweater. Is that okay? Again, everybody says, no, of course that's not okay. Why are you asking such ridiculous questions? Then it gets to the point where smoke starts coming out their ears. Is it okay if you and your neighbors say, what if we vote for one of us to be like a mayor of our town? And we can even let the guy with the ugly sweater vote because he only has one vote, so it's not going to make any difference. So we're all going to vote for one of us to be mayor, and he'll hire someone he'll pass an ordinance or a law or something that says it's okay to kill that guy for wearing an ugly sweater. And then we'll appoint some sheriff or something to go kill him. Does that make it okay? Now, the obvious answer is no, none of it, nothing you can do is going to make this okay. The words, the rituals, the documents, the elections, there's nothing that this group of people can do that's going to make it okay to murder someone for wearing an ugly sweater. Everybody instinctively knows that. However, a whole lot of people at this point start to realize where this line of reasoning is going, and they start to get a little bit nervous sometimes. So, given those really obvious answers to those really simple questions, can we boil this down to a principle? If it's wrong for you to do a certain thing yourself, is it also wrong for you to try to get someone else to do the same thing for you? Yes, duh. obviously, and people instinctively understand that, and almost everybody say that, and I say, okay, that wasn't that painful, was it? Like, that wasn't exactly super advanced, complex philosophy. It's the bleeding obvious. And then I ask them to, okay, remember that principle, because we're going to get to it in a moment. If it's not okay for you to do something, getting somebody else to do the same thing for you also isn't okay. I mean, this is something that 3-year-olds should be able to instinctively understand. Like, don't hit your brother, and don't ask your sister to hit your brother for you. Like, how advanced do you have to be to understand that? Now, if we take those people who, we didn't make any exceptions asking those questions about that principle. We didn't say, well, unless some other weird thing is involved. If they accept that premise and that principle, which almost everybody does at this point. In fact, I don't know if I've ever met anybody who said, no, it's bad for me to do this, but it's good for me to ask somebody else to do it for me. So with that in mind, let's apply that to politics. Let's design an ideal government that abides by the principle, if you shouldn't do something, you shouldn't ask somebody else to do the same thing for you. That's it. Just that principle. I mean, there's a lot of other things we could get into. Let's start just there, something that basic. Well, this new government, it wouldn't have the right to do anything that you don't have the right to do yourself, by definition, because that's the principle. So, do you have the right to force millions of people to fund whatever you think is okay? No. If it's not okay for you to go rob all your neighbors and extort your neighbors year after year to pay for whatever you want, whether it's caring for the poor or building a bridge or having a police force, if you don't have the right to do that, and we're applying this principle, then you also shouldn't ask government to do that for you. So this new government, based on this one principle, won't have the power to tax. It can ask for donations, because you're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to ask people to donate to build a bridge or to help the poor or whatever. And so it makes sense for you to ask this new government to do that. But you don't have the right to force them to do anything. And so, under this principle, this new government we're trying to define won't have that right either. So, yeah, it won't have the power to tax. Now, at the same time, you can ask people to voluntarily donate, but let's say you're asking people to voluntarily donate to help the poor, and somebody else says, well, yeah, we do a thing where we collect money for the poor too. If some people say, yeah, I kind of like their program better, like it seems more caring or it seems more efficient or whatever it is, do you have the right to say, no, if you're going to give care for the poor, you're going to give me the money? No, of course not. So you don't have the right to have a monopoly on caring for the poor and asking for donations. So this new government, based on that same principle of if you don't have the right to do it, you shouldn't ask somebody else to do it, that government, it won't have a monopoly either. So it can't tax anybody, and it doesn't have a monopoly on anything it does. If people want to care for the poor some other way, or fund a bridge some other way, or hire people to protect against psychos some other way, they don't have the right to stop them. So it can't tax, doesn't have a monopoly. And because people in a territory can decide whether or not to fund it or whether to use somebody else, it also doesn't have a territory. It doesn't have this new government based on this principle doesn't have any jurisdiction, like geographically. It doesn't have a territory. Anybody who wants to chip in to help the poor or fund a bridge or whatever can do so, and anybody who doesn't want to doesn't have to. So there's no such thing as everyone inside this line has to do anything. So this new government can't tax, has no monopoly, and has no jurisdiction. Okay? This is sounding like a pretty weird government. And because you don't have the right to tell other people what to do and just say, well, I don't like your habit, and I don't like your lifestyle, and I don't like you choosing to do that, as long as they're being peaceful, you don't have the right to control them by force. So if we apply the principle that if you shouldn't do something, you shouldn't ask somebody else to do it for you, that means this new government based on this principle won't have the right to legislate anything. Like declaring something to be law wouldn't mean anything any more than if you said, I hereby declare it to be illegal to, like, smoke cigarettes. Like, well, who are you? You're just a guy. Your word isn't law. You have no right to tell other people to do that. You can encourage them not to and say words. You have no right to use force and coercion, so you have no right to ask government to do it. So now it can't tax, doesn't have a monopoly, doesn't have any jurisdiction, and can't legislate anything. Now, you do have the right to protect somebody. If you see somebody, a little old lady and somebody trying to steal her purse, you have the right to intervene and try to chase away the purse snatcher or get the purse back if you already did it. So for you to ask somebody else to do that, when you already have that right, that's at least consistent. So you can say, well, this new government can't tax, can't legislate, doesn't have a monopoly, doesn't have any jurisdiction, but it can defend people. So that's pretty good, right? And people can decide whether to voluntarily donate to help them do that. So that's all it can do. Okay, cool. We found the ideal government. And all it took was that very simple principle that almost everybody automatically agrees on when I ask, a few simple questions. If you shouldn't do a certain thing, don't ask somebody else to do it. Same thing for you. Just that principle. It's not like that's the only principle in the universe, but just beginning with that insanely basic thing that every 5-year-old should instinctively understand, we already have government whittled down to this very not usual version of government. My only objection to this new government that can't tax, can't legislate, doesn't have a monopoly, doesn't have jurisdiction, and can only use force in defensive ways that anybody has the right to use force, my only objection to it is, why the hell would you call that government when it literally has none of the qualities that make something government? It's like saying, oh yeah, we have a local carjacker, and what he does is wash people's cars if they want him to. He doesn't steal their cars? No, he's just a nice guy who washes the cars. Why are you calling him a carjacker? Oh, well, he used to be a carjacker, but we talked him into not doing the bad stuff. Well, he's not a carjacker anymore. And if you take government and you whittle off all the things that are violent aggression that you don't have the right to do, what's left is perfectly moral, but it isn't government by any stretch of the imagination. Government means the exercise of authority over a people or place, and authority means the right to rule. You don't have the right to rule. You can't give such a right to government. You shouldn't ask them to do such a thing if you don't have a right to do it yourself. That's the very basic principle that we're covering here, which means we whittle down government to exactly what it should be, and it's not government anymore. Now it's just people. It's just people doing stuff and having the rights that people do, and right and wrong applies the same to them as it does to everybody else, which is why they don't have a monopoly. If you have a bunch of people who decide to donate to pay some guy to come running with a gun if they call, as a protector, okay, but you don't get to force anybody else to do that. Other people can choose different people or can defend themselves. So it's not government, it's just a guy, or it's just a group of people. And so that one principle completely makes the entire concept fall apart. And the other way to say that is there cannot be a government that abides by this very basic, obvious principle. No one who advocates government of any kind, of any size, anywhere, of any flavor, abides by that painfully obvious principle that almost everyone will agree to if you ask them a few simple questions. Which means nobody who believes in government is abiding by the principles they themselves believe in. Every advocate of government of any size advocates that government do things that they know they have no right to do themselves. And by the way, this was totally true of me over 27 years ago, back when I believed in government. Everything I advocated that government should do were things that I don't have the right to do. Like tax people for their own good, to fund a big military to protect us from scary foreigners, and a police force to protect us from local scary people. Now, the protection is legitimate, the robbery is not. But if you boil it down to what people normally have the right to do, isn't government anymore. But the temptation for people to ask for this authoritarian monster to make the world the way they think it should be, because they've been taught that authority and elections and constitutions make that legitimate, and they've been taught to not notice that this is a violation of a very simple principle of, if you shouldn't do something, don't ask somebody else to do it for you. Then all the good people who in their day-to-day lives are like, don't steal, don't attack people, they vote for government to steal and attack people. And they don't even recognize it as immoral, and they don't even recognize that if they're asked about this principle themselves, they all give the voluntarist answers and then vote for the exact opposite of that, and they don't notice the contradiction. So that's just one line of questioning you can use to bring people to demonstrate that people, even this isn't like some super complex thing. The most basic rules about being a decent human being absolutely rule out the possibility of government being legitimate. And that's actually how I accidentally became an anarchist. Almost exactly what I described, by whittling down the ideal government that I was advocating until it was actually moral. I was like, yes, this thing. And then I realized that doesn't have any authority. That's not government. It's just people. And then I noticed that means I oppose all government, because government is necessarily immoral and illegitimate. I advocate cooperation and organization and defense and helping the poor and building bridges and all that other stuff by way of consent, but nothing that I advocate falls under the definition of government anymore, because government is, by its very nature, violent and immoral and illegitimate. So sometimes getting people to have a major shift in how they view reality, you don't even have to get any more complicated philosophically. You don't have to give them like 500-page treatise on Austrian economics. You get them to the point where they go, yeah, of course, obviously, instinctively, if you shouldn't do it yourself, don't ask somebody else to do it. And then gently get them to the point where they realize they personally betray that principle that they believe in every time they vote for any government, every time they advocate any government program, no matter how lovely it sounds. Oh, free health care for the funded by what? Oh, taxation, that I don't have the right to do, so I shouldn't ask them to do it. Whoops. So, those who are trying to make this big elaborate argument for anarchism, it's weird to watch, because the argument, and those who say, a lot of people are too dumb to understand it. Do you know anybody too dumb to understand if you shouldn't do something yourself, you shouldn't ask someone else to do it for you? Or is anybody really too dumb to understand that? Now, to get them to see the ramifications and relate that to politics and recognize that everything they believe politically, if they're not anarchists, goes against that really obvious principle, that can take some time because they've been indoctrinated into it. But no, at the end of the day, this is not a complicated thing. It is ridiculously simple. If you want the longer explanation that just slices and dices the entire notion of authority, then get my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition. But again, that was a piece, that was a chunk of one of the talks I gave at Porcfest. And I thought I'd throw it into a video because, I mean, I've talked about all these things before, but I don't think I've ever made a video that just focused on that one simple way that literally everybody will give the voluntarist answers. And then you have to gently get them to recognize that the answers they gave about what they believe, what they think about morality and how people should behave is absolutely incompatible with any government anywhere ever. Getting them to notice that, and then getting them to, feel safe enough to process it in their heads and go through the process of going, wait, so all that stuff I ever heard about democracy and wait a minute, how does that... They have to process it. And then Candles in the Dark is all about helping them get to the point where they process it and then giving them the room and the space to do so without feeling attacked and all that fun stuff. So that's about it. Yeah, if you want to understand the philosophical concepts, read The Most Dangerous Superstition. And if you want to know how to be way more effective at getting normal people to think about those concepts, then I suggest doing my course, Candles in the Dark. And then the more recent thing that sort of goes along with that called Making Anarchy Mainstream. And I will put links to all three of them below. But yeah, Anarchism is just the result of an insanely simple thing that almost everybody already believes. So it's kind of annoying that it's this difficult to get so many people to accept something that they already believe and just ask them to apply it to everything. Then you don't have ruling classes anymore.